Welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a horror movie review, and I'll be having a look at the movie The Vatican Exorcisms. So this is a kind of, it's sort of a found footage film. Actually, it's kind of, it's more like a sort of mock documentary ultimately, but I guess it would fall under the kind of the found footage style of films. And basically, the kind of the premise of this documentary is it basically focuses on a filmmaker called Joe, who takes his team to the Vatican and sort of around Rome, basically in search of evidence of the devil, ultimately, and corruption within the Vatican. So the kind of the first portion of the movie really focuses on the actual Vatican itself and kind of corruption within the Vatican. You know, there's all these apparently there's missing women and things like that, and the Vatican's sort of accused of holding sort of orgies and stuff like that, and they kind of witness a kind of a black mass, and then from there basically they kind of follow this sort of exorcist around who performs a number of exorcisms, and this kind of this crew sort of follows him around among them sort of, I think it's three or four exorcisms, and you know, so they kind of film each one, and that's pretty much the plot. I mean, there's kind of you see some sort of the main guy, Joe, is kind of, it looks like he's kind of falling to pieces and maybe sort of under the influence himself of some sort of supernatural sort of entity. So it's all kind of made like a kind of pseudo documentary, and they've tried to kind of make it as realistic as possible. So you know, you'll kind of see there's not really any cast listed for this aside from the actual director himself, who is the guy on screen, Joe, and there's no special effects in this film. It's a really low budget movie, and it's good. It's kind of trying to make it as kind of as special as you can. There's a couple of sound effects in it, but there's no actual visual effects. So don't let that cover for you. But that's not in the movie at all. It's one of those situations where that's just dramatic license. And the only kind of like spooky thing you'll kind of really see in this film, and a little bit of a mild spoiler, is that the kind of the last exorcism is basically a guy who can do sort of body contortions, and you know, that's going to make it look a bit freaky. But the problem is they kind of really stretch these exorcisms out, particularly the last one, and there's also one with kind of a nun as well. They just seem to go on forever, and they're not the most sort of interesting things. I mean, arguably, yeah, you could say they're probably not sort of the typical kind of Hollywood sort of style exorcisms that you've seen, but they're pretty boring to be quite honest. Now don't be fooled. This isn't a real documentary. You know, this is actually a film. I mean, there's even some loopholes in the logic. The first sort of thing you'll see, they kind of film this black mass, and you know, they kind of witnessing sort of, you know, people getting sacrificed and stuff, and they sort of, you know, say phone the police, but you never hear anyone phone the police, and they literally run for 30 seconds to a main road where the police is there, stuff like that. So you know, it's kind of, although it's well made to a point considering the budget, and they've obviously gone for a kind of realistic tone, it just unfortunately doesn't make it necessarily a kind of more a particularly entertaining movie. As I say, there's not a lot actually to it for a film. It's a relatively sort of meager running time. It's only just over 70 minutes, I think. So you know, it's relatively quick, and it's, you know, it's obviously impressive to see what, you know, you can kind of do with very sort of low budget. There is actually one kind of, it starts off to be quite a spooky scene in a hotel, and ends up being quite funny. That's probably my favourite bit of the film. I won't spoil it for you though. So not a bad attempt at kind of making kind of ultra low budget movie and kind of packaging it up like this kind of documentary. But you know, it's not really an entertaining film, and it just kind of seems like it's dragging because there's not a lot actually happens within it, and the actual kind of overall sort of story of this guy sort of seemingly being under the influence is, you know, he kind of mugs the camera a little bit, I find, and you'll sort of, it's one of these sort of situations where you kind of why is he filming himself watching YouTube and stuff like that at like 2 in the morning, and there happens to be a mysterious knock at the door, stuff like that. So it was okay for a kind of low budget film. It's certainly not something you'd ever watch again. It'll be something you watch once and that you'd forget it. I'll give it a 3 out of 10. It was okay for a low budget effort, but like I said, don't expect anything. There's no gore. There's no real jumps in it. There's nothing really scary in it. you know, so I applaud the attempt at a very, very low budget film, but unfortunately I can't really recommend it if you're a horror fan necessarily. Anyway, if you've seen it, let me know what your thoughts are. Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.